Captain Liam Hayes leaned back in his command chair, his gaze fixed on the seemingly endless stretch of stars outside the viewport of his small exploration vessel, the Vanguard. He had spent months patrolling the edges of known space, mapping anomalies and charting resource-rich systems for Earth's expanding colonies. It was lonely work, but Hayes didn't mind. The silence of space was a comfort to him, a constant, vast emptiness where he could lose himself without distractions. However, today was different. A faint, almost indiscernible energy reading had interrupted the usual monotony, sparking his curiosity. The signal was coming from a small, uncharted planet on the very outskirts of human-controlled space. Official records listed it as uninhabited, a lifeless rock devoid of any noteworthy resources or strategic significance. But the energy signature was steady and deliberate, definitely not natural. It pulsed at intervals, almost like a heartbeat, drawing him in. Against protocol, Hayes decided to investigate. After all, one of the perks of being out in the fringe was that he could bend the rules without anyone watching. As he approached the planet, it appeared as though its surface was covered in green and blue hues, strangely Earth-like in its appearance, but with a subtle, otherworldly shimmer that suggested a hidden history. He couldn't shake the feeling that he was about to stumble upon something monumental, something buried deep within the abandoned corners of the galaxy. With a quick adjustment of his ship's controls, Hayes initiated the descent sequence, feeling a slight thrill as the Vanguard cut through the thin atmosphere and broke through the dense cloud cover. The landscape that greeted him was both beautiful and unsettling. Jagged cliffs of crystalline rock rose like skyscrapers, casting eerie shadows over a terrain covered in dense, bioluminescent vegetation that glowed in soft shades of blue and purple. The colors shifted and pulsed, creating a dreamlike quality that made him feel as if he'd stepped into another dimension. The energy readings grew stronger as he descended, guiding him to a specific location near the equator. After finding a stable landing spot, Hayes geared up and stepped out of the ship. His boots sank slightly into the strange, spongy ground, which seemed to pulse beneath him, almost as if the planet itself was alive. He adjusted his helmet, running a diagnostic to ensure it could filter the air. The atmosphere was breathable, but he preferred the extra layer of protection. Who knew what kind of microscopic threats might be lurking in this alien ecosystem? Following the energy readings, Hayes made his way through a maze of towering rock formations, their surfaces etched with intricate patterns that seemed almost deliberate, like ancient carvings. As he progressed, the readings grew more intense, and soon he arrived at a clearing dominated by a colossal, monolithic structure. It was like nothing he'd ever seen before, massive spires reaching into the sky, crafted from a strange, iridescent material that seemed to absorb and refract the light around it. The structure hummed faintly, as if alive. He stepped closer, reaching out to touch the surface of the monolith. The moment his fingers brushed against it, the ground beneath him trembled, and a low, resonant hum filled the air. Instinctively, he took a step back, hand reaching for his blaster as the ground around him began to shift. Panels in the earth slid away, revealing a hidden entrance, a dark, gaping maw that led down into the depths below. A sense of caution mixed with intrigue flooded Hayes's mind. He was a trained explorer, but the unknown nature of this place was making his instincts scream to turn back. Still, his curiosity won over, and he activated the flashlight on his suit, descending cautiously into the entrance. The passageway was narrow, barely wide enough for him to maneuver in his gear, and the walls were etched with the same strange symbols he'd seen outside. They seemed to shift and move as his light passed over them, almost alive. After several minutes, he emerged into a vast chamber, unlike anything he'd ever encountered. Alien machinery lined the walls, covered in dust and grime, as if it hadn't been touched in centuries. The energy readings spiked sharply here, and he could feel a strange warmth emanating from the room's center. At the heart of the chamber was a large, crystalline pod, encased in transparent panels. Inside the pod there was a figure, a tall, slender being with delicate features and iridescent skin that shimmered faintly, even through the glass. For a moment, Hayes was frozen in shock. He had always known there were other intelligent life forms out there, but to find one here in such a dormant state was beyond anything he had imagined. He stepped closer, inspecting the pod, and noticed a control panel nearby, its buttons and symbols foreign but vaguely intuitive. He hesitated, knowing that meddling with alien technology could be dangerous, but the lure of discovery was too strong. With careful precision, he tapped a sequence on the control panel, watching as the pod began to hum and light up. The energy surged, and the figure inside stirred, slowly opening its eyes. Hayes took a step back, hand instinctively going to his sidearm, but he held himself steady, not wanting to come off as hostile. The figure within the pod slowly rose, stepping out with an elegance that was almost ethereal. She, he could tell by her delicate features and graceful build, regarded him with an expression of surprise mixed with caution. Her eyes, a luminous shade of green, studied him with a piercing intensity, as if she was trying to understand what he was and why he was here. Hayes stood frozen, realizing that he was looking at the last living remnant of an alien civilization. After a tense silence, the alien woman spoke, her voice a soft, melodic hum that echoed faintly in the chamber. Although he couldn't understand her words, he could sense the curiosity and wariness in her tone. Hayes activated his suit's translation module, hoping it would pick up enough of her language to facilitate communication. Slowly, words began to filter through, though fragmented. "Who are... why... awaken?" She seemed as bewildered by his presence as he was by hers. Hayes tried to speak calmly, holding up his hands in a gesture of peace. "My name is Captain Hayes," he said slowly, hoping his words would make sense to her through the translator. "I found your world, by accident. I mean no harm." The alien queen tilted her head, her expression softening slightly, though her gaze remained wary. It was clear she hadn't expected anyone to find her, let alone a human. They stood in silence, two beings from vastly different worlds, each trying to make sense of the other. Hayes could sense that this encounter was only the beginning of something far larger than either of them could anticipate. The silence in the chamber was almost deafening as Captain Hayes and the alien queen continued to size each other up. Hayes felt a surge of adrenaline, knowing he was standing face to face with an extraterrestrial being who, judging by the grandeur of the chamber and her regal bearing, was likely of high status, perhaps even a leader of her people. Her gaze was intense, yet calm, a watchfulness born of years, perhaps centuries, of knowledge and wisdom. There was something timeless about her, as if she were a remnant of an ancient era, forgotten by the galaxy but very much alive in this hidden sanctuary. Finally, the queen broke the silence. Her melodic voice, now somewhat more coherent through Hayes's translator, conveyed a mixture of command and curiosity. "Why have you come, human? Why wake me? From slumber?" Hayes took a deep breath, steadying himself. He had rehearsed this moment in his mind countless times, imagining first contact scenarios, but the reality was far more daunting. I am an explorer, a scout for my people. My ship picked up a strange energy signature from this planet. I thought this world was uninhabited. He hesitated, searching for the right words. I didn't mean to intrude. I was drawn here. The Queen's eyes narrowed slightly, as if weighing his words. She held herself with a dignity and poise that reminded Hayes of Earth's own rulers and leaders. Yet her movements were smoother, her gestures more fluid, like water flowing in a river. She took a step closer, studying him intently, her gaze sharp and unblinking. Your people, they have come far then, to travel the stars. Yes, he replied, nodding cautiously. We have only recently begun to explore beyond our own star system. This encounter is new for us. We haven't met others like you. The Queen's expression softened slightly, though her eyes held a hint of sadness. Once, my people traveled the stars as you do now. We built great cities, crafted wonders beyond imagining. But all things fade in time. Her gaze drifted to the chamber around them, taking in the dormant machines and the forgotten grandeur of her surroundings. We were not alone, but we learned to live with solitude. Hayes felt a pang of empathy for her. The thought of an entire civilization reduced to a single being, waiting in an isolated tomb on a distant, forgotten planet, struck him as unbearably tragic. He wanted to ask her more, to understand what had happened to her people, but he sensed that such questions might be painful, perhaps even unwelcome. "Why are you alone here?" he asked gently, hoping his tone conveyed his respect. The Queen's expression grew distant, as if looking back through the ages. "The stars are not always kind, Captain Hayes. Our empire was vast, but with vastness comes enemies." She paused, a shadow crossing her face. "There was a war, a conflict that tore the galaxy apart. We fought to protect ourselves, but in the end, only silence remained. This sanctuary was our last refuge, a place for our leaders to preserve what little was left." Hayes nodded, understanding the weight of her words. He had heard stories of ancient civilizations, species that had risen and fallen long before humanity's time. It was humbling, hearing firsthand from a survivor of one such civilization, a being who had witnessed epochs pass and empires crumble. The Queen's eyes refocused on him, the sadness giving way to a steely resolve. "And now you have awakened me. Tell me, Captain Hayes, is there peace in your galaxy, or do you come with the same shadows my people once faced?" Hayes felt a pang of responsibility as he considered her question. Humanity's expansion into the stars had not been without its conflicts. Colonization often brought disputes over resources, and while humans hadn't yet encountered alien species, they had their own internal strife. "We strive for peace," he said cautiously, "but I won't lie to you. We face challenges, some of them of our own making. There is ambition, competition, yet we also have hope." The Queen seemed to consider this, her gaze softening slightly. "Hope?" she murmured, as if the word were foreign, a relic from another era. "Hope is a fragile thing, easily lost." She looked down at her hands, as if remembering something distant. "But perhaps it is also the spark that lights the darkness." A faint tremor ran through the ground, and Hayes tensed, hand reaching instinctively for his blaster. The Queen's eyes flashed with urgency, and she reached out, placing a slender hand on his arm. "Do not fear. The defenses are reacting to the energy surge caused by my awakening, but they will stabilize soon." Hayes relaxed slightly, though he couldn't shake the unease creeping over him. Defenses? What kind of defenses? Her gaze was sharp, assessing him. Our people prepared for the possibility of intruders. The walls of this sanctuary are lined with automated defenses to protect what remains. She hesitated, then added, "If there are others among your kind, tell them to keep their distance." Hayes felt a chill at her words. "There aren't others," he assured her. "I'm alone. My mission is strictly reconnaissance." He paused, a thought occurring to him. "Are you expecting enemies?" The Queen's expression darkened, and her voice dropped to a whisper. "They are gone, but the darkness they brought still lingers. My people's enemies may have vanished, but there are others who hunger for power, who would consume entire worlds if left unchecked." She met his gaze, her eyes filled with a haunted resolve. "That is why I was kept here. Waiting for the day when the galaxy would need a protector once more." A sense of foreboding settled over Hayes as he absorbed her words. He realized now that he hadn't just stumbled upon a relic of the past. He had awakened something ancient, something that had waited eons for its purpose to be fulfilled. He looked at the Queen, a newfound respect mingling with a sense of duty. "If there's a threat out there, we'll need allies. My people may not be as advanced as yours were, but we're resourceful. We won't back down from a fight." The Queen's gaze softened, and for the first time a faint smile played across her lips. "Perhaps there is hope yet, Captain Hayes. Perhaps your people have the spirit that my own lost in the darkness." She paused, her expression thoughtful. "But if we are to stand together, you will need to understand the nature of the enemy that lies in wait. I can show you, if you are willing." Hayes nodded without hesitation. "I'm willing. Show me." With a graceful gesture, the Queen beckoned him to follow her deeper into the chamber, where the shadows grew thick and the air felt charged with a strange, electric energy. Hayes's heartbeat quickened as they moved, sensing that he was about to uncover secrets that had been hidden for centuries. He couldn't shake the feeling that this encounter was the beginning of something far greater than himself, a pivotal moment that could alter the course of humanity's destiny. They came to a halt before a massive stone tablet, covered in symbols and carvings that glowed faintly in the dim light. The Queen reached out, placing her hand on the tablet, and the symbols pulsed brighter, illuminating the chamber in a warm, golden light. "Watch," she whispered, as the air around them began to shimmer with visions of the past. Battles fought among the stars, towering alien warships, and a darkness that seemed to swallow entire worlds. Hayes felt his breath catch in his throat as he witnessed the horrors she had endured, the unimaginable power she had faced, and in that moment he understood. This alliance was not just an opportunity for exploration, but a necessity for survival. The visions around Hayes swirled in chaotic patterns, immersing him in the long-forgotten past. He felt as though he were watching a distant memory, a fragment of history both surreal and overwhelmingly real. Stars, as vast and numerous as the grains of sand on a beach, stretched across the scene. Amidst them loomed ships, massive alien vessels, unlike anything humanity had ever conceived. Their sleek designs were disrupted by jagged edges and spiked hulls, as though they had been crafted with the sole purpose of intimidation and destruction. Beside him, the Queen's presence was palpable, her gaze locked onto the visions as if reliving every moment. Hayes dared to glance at her, noting the sorrow etched into her features, a silent testament to the weight of memories that still haunted her. She had witnessed this devastation firsthand, a witness to both the rise and fall of her civilization. "These were our enemies," she began, her voice low and almost reverent, as if speaking louder might wake the dead. The Voidborn. They came from beyond the edge of the known universe, an unending tide of darkness. For eons, my people believed that the stars were ours, that we were alone in the void. And then, they came. The vision shifted, zooming in on one of the Voidborn ships as it unleashed a massive burst of energy. A bright, blinding beam sliced through space, cutting down a fleet of her people's ships in an instant. Hayes felt an involuntary shiver as he watched the scene, realizing that these beings wielded technology far more advanced and far more malevolent than anything humanity had yet encountered. "Why did they attack you?" Hayes asked, trying to understand the motivation behind such destruction. What did they want? The Queen looked at him, her gaze distant and filled with a bitterness that spoke of betrayal. They were drawn to the energy of life itself. They saw it as a fuel source, something to be consumed. They tore through civilizations, absorbing whatever they deemed useful and discarding the rest. To them, our empire was merely a resource, a feast. She extended her hand toward the vision, and as she did, a new scene unfolded. Hayes could see towering cities, spiraling skyscrapers that seemed to reach out toward the stars, alive with vibrant colors and bustling with alien life. It was a city unlike anything he'd seen, a place of architectural beauty and advanced technology. But within moments, the scene darkened. The Voidborn ships descended upon it, their weapons raining down destruction. Buildings crumbled, people ran in terror, and the once vibrant city was reduced to rubble and ash. "We tried to resist," she continued, her voice barely a whisper. "We fought with everything we had, weaponry you could scarcely imagine. We forged alliances with other species, creatures as ancient and powerful as ourselves. But the Voidborn, they were relentless. For every ship we destroyed, they sent 10 more. For every victory, there were countless defeats." Hayes could hardly believe what he was hearing. "And you survived all of this?" The Queen nodded, her eyes fixed on the scene of devastation. "I survived. Barely, but it was not enough. My people were scattered, our empire shattered. Those of us who were left retreated to our final sanctuaries, hidden across the galaxy, places that the Voidborn would not think to look. We became legends, whispers in the darkness." Another vision emerged, a massive fortress suspended in the cold reaches of space, hidden behind asteroid belts and cloaked in darkness. Hayes could sense that this was where the Queen and her people had taken refuge. The scene shifted again, showing her people within the fortress, their faces filled with despair, some clutching their loved ones, others staring blankly at the endless void outside. It was a grim scene of survival at the edge of extinction. "And what happened to the Voidborn?" Hayes asked, almost afraid of the answer. The Queen's expression hardened, her voice laced with grim satisfaction. "They overreached. Their greed led them to attempt to consume more than they could control. Some of our allies managed to strike a decisive blow, shattering their power. The Voidborn fleet splintered, each faction scrambling to secure their own survival. Some were destroyed. Others vanished, fading into the dark reaches from which they had come." The Queen paused, letting her words sink in. "But even in defeat, their legacy endures. They left remnants scattered across the stars, artifacts and weapons of unimaginable power. And there are those who would seek to claim that power, beings who see themselves as heirs to the Voidborn's legacy." Hayes felt a surge of foreboding. He'd heard tales of derelict ships and forgotten weapons drifting in space, relics of civilizations long gone. Humanity had discovered only a fraction of these artifacts, but he could only imagine the damage they could cause if they fell into the wrong hands. "And you? Why were you left here?" Hayes asked, piecing together what he could. "Why did you choose to remain alone in this sanctuary?" The Queen looked away, her gaze distant. "I was chosen to safeguard what little knowledge remained, to be a sentinel for future generations. My people knew that one day someone would come, a species that might be worthy of our knowledge, or perhaps in need of our strength." She looked at him intently, her eyes filled with an ancient wisdom. "That day has come, it seems, but it is not only my people's knowledge you need, it is the ability to defend against what the Voidborn left behind." As she spoke, a sense of purpose filled Hayes. This encounter was no accident. It was destiny. Humanity had stumbled upon a crossroads, a chance to gain knowledge and allies that could tip the scales of the galaxy's balance, but it was also a responsibility, one that weighed heavily on his shoulders. "What must I do?" Hayes asked, his voice steady. The Queen's gaze softened. "To fight the remnants of the Voidborn, you will need allies, not just among your own kind, but from across the stars. You must find others who value life over conquest, cooperation over domination. Together, you may stand a chance." Hayes nodded, already thinking of how he would explain this to his superiors back on Earth. "And will you help us?" The Queen tilted her head, a faint smile tugging at the corners of her mouth. "That is why I was awakened. I will teach you, guide you, if you are willing to learn. But be warned, Captain Hayes, the journey ahead is fraught with peril. You must be prepared to make sacrifices." He swallowed, feeling the weight of her words. "I understand. And I'm ready." A slow nod from the Queen confirmed her approval. "Then let us begin." The visions faded, leaving them alone in the dimly lit chamber once more. But Hayes felt different now, stronger, wiser, and with a new sense of purpose burning in his chest. The galaxy was a far darker place than he had imagined, but it also held the potential for alliances, for partnerships that could transcend species and borders. As he and the Queen walked back toward the entrance of the chamber, Hayes felt a strange sense of camaraderie with her, a bond that went beyond words. Together they would face whatever the galaxy had in store. And with her knowledge and humanity's tenacity, he dared to hope that they might just succeed. The cavernous hall was quiet, with only the hum of ancient machinery filling the stillness. Hayes and the Queen stood in silence, an unspoken understanding forming between them. Hayes could sense that the Queen was not just a warrior or a leader. She was a remnant of something much greater, something humanity had barely begun to comprehend. In her presence, he felt both honored and dwarfed, like a single flame beside an ancient, raging fire. "I do not know how to thank you," he began, his voice low and reverent. "You've given me insight into a world I never imagined." The Queen looked at him with a mixture of pride and sorrow. "I offer you more than just insight, Captain Hayes. I offer you the guidance and knowledge of my people, a wisdom we paid dearly to attain. But you must understand, this alliance comes with burdens. My kind is nearly extinct. I have remained here as a sentinel, awaiting the arrival of those who would stand against the shadows of the Voidborn. That day is here, and so my role will change." Hayes frowned, uncertain. "What do you mean?" The Queen lifted her gaze to the distant walls of the chamber, her eyes reflecting centuries of solitude. "I am bound to this place by duty and by necessity. My life force is tethered to the core of this sanctuary, preserving what little remains of my people's legacy. Leaving it would weaken me, perhaps even destroy me. However, the knowledge stored here, the history, the technology, the battle strategies, they can be yours if you are willing to accept the responsibility. A heavy silence settled between them as Hayes grappled with the magnitude of her offer. The implications were staggering. Access to ancient technology that could shift the balance of power in the galaxy, a repository of wisdom and strategy to guide humanity through the darkest battles. But he knew it was more than a gift. It was a charge, a responsibility that would require humanity to rise to new heights of integrity and unity. "Yes," he said, his voice steady, "we'll accept this responsibility. I'll bring leaders from Earth, those who can comprehend the importance of what you're offering, and together we'll forge a partnership that honors the sacrifice of your people." The Queen inclined her head, a glimmer of approval in her eyes. "There is one more matter we must discuss, Captain Hayes. You are not the only one who seeks power. The galaxy has its share of those who lust after control, who would take what is offered here and wield it to spread darkness." Hayes's mind instantly raced to the threats he knew humanity faced: the ruthless warlords, the opportunistic corporations, the clandestine organizations that would stop at nothing to amass influence and weaponry. He understood that gaining this alliance would mean guarding it fiercely against those who might seek to corrupt it. "I understand," he replied gravely, "but how do we defend ourselves? We're a young race, just beginning to find our way in the galaxy." The Queen's gaze turned sharp and discerning. "The path to strength lies not in isolation, but in unity. If humanity is to stand against the forces that threaten to consume it, you must seek allies beyond your own kind. Look to those who share a common vision of peace and freedom, even if they are different from you. There are others out there, scattered survivors of the Voidborn's onslaught, civilizations that have been hiding, waiting for the right moment to rise again." Her words struck Hayes with sudden clarity. He realized that humanity's destiny wasn't to stand alone, to be solitary explorers in the cosmic wilderness. They were to be unifiers, builders of alliances that transcended species and cultures. The vision felt overwhelming, yet it filled him with a strange sense of hope and purpose. "Will you help us make contact with these other civilizations?" Hayes asked. "With your knowledge, we could find allies we would never have known about." The Queen hesitated, an unexpected flicker of vulnerability crossing her face. "My people were known once, but many of the alliances we forged are long forgotten or have dissolved into myth. I do not know if these lost civilizations would even recognize us, let alone trust us. But there is one way to begin." She gestured to the wall behind her, and Hayes watched as a section of it shimmered and transformed into a map. A vast, three-dimensional star chart, showing the galaxy in exquisite detail. Lines of connection weaved between stars, marking trade routes, alliances, and ancient paths once traveled by her people. "This map," the Queen explained, "contains coordinates to hidden sanctuaries, remnants of the old alliances. Some may still be inhabited, others may lie abandoned, mere relics of a bygone age. If you wish to rebuild what was lost, you will need to start here. But be cautious. Some of these locations hold secrets that even I do not fully understand. There are risks as well as rewards." Hayes took in the map, feeling the weight of its significance. This was a roadmap to lost civilizations, to ancient secrets that had been hidden for millennia. But he also knew that each discovery would come with its own dangers, its own price to pay. The Voidborn's influence might still linger in these places, a toxic legacy that could corrupt or destroy those unprepared to face it. "I'll take the risk," he replied, his resolve hardening. "If we can bring even one of these civilizations into an alliance, it would be worth it. We'll learn, adapt, and grow stronger together." The Queen's eyes softened, a hint of pride flickering in their depths. "Then you are ready, Captain Hayes. You and your people have proven yourselves to me. Go forth with courage. Seek out those who remember the ancient ways, who long for freedom from the darkness. They will see in you the hope that we once saw in ourselves." She extended a hand toward him, and Hayes instinctively took it. Her skin felt cool and smooth, but there was a warmth to her touch that conveyed both strength and compassion. A faint glow pulsed between them as she spoke again. "This bond, between my people and yours, is not just a pact of words. It is a vow of unity, a promise that we will stand together against whatever the galaxy may bring. Go now, Captain Hayes. Go with my blessing, and know that I will watch over you from afar." With that, she withdrew her hand and stepped back. The map faded from view, leaving Hayes with only the memory of its intricate lines and the sense of destiny it conveyed. The Queen gave him a final nod, a silent farewell that spoke more than words ever could. Turning, Hayes walked back toward the entrance of the sanctuary, feeling the enormity of what he had just pledged. Humanity's future had taken a new path, one that led into uncharted territories and alliances with beings they had once thought were only myths. As he stepped into the blinding light outside, Hayes shielded his eyes, squinting into the horizon. He felt both exhilarated and humbled, filled with a sense of duty that ran deeper than anything he had ever known. Behind him, the Queen's sanctuary remained, a silent witness to the promise that had been made. With newfound determination, he tapped into his communicator, connecting to his ship. "This is Captain Hayes. Prepare for immediate departure. We have a mission to reshape the galaxy." A chorus of affirmations came through his earpiece, the voices of his crew echoing his resolve. Together, they would set out to chart the stars, to find allies among civilizations that had once hidden in the shadows. And, as the engines roared to life and his ship lifted off, Hayes glanced back one last time at the sanctuary. He could still feel the Queen's presence, a faint warmth that told him she was watching. A silent guardian over their journey. With a final, steadying breath, he turned his gaze forward toward the vast expanse of stars that awaited them. The journey ahead would be perilous, filled with unknowns, but, for the first time, Hayes felt ready. The galaxy, once a place of isolation and fear, had become a canvas upon which he and his allies would write a new chapter of unity, resilience, and hope. And he, Captain Hayes, would be its first author. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge of his ship, the starlit void stretching endlessly before him. It had been days since their departure from the Queen's sanctuary, and the crew's initial awe had settled into a quiet determination. Each person on board felt the weight of their new mission, the responsibility they held to rebuild an ancient alliance and seek out the lost civilizations scattered across the galaxy. The star map the Queen had provided was their guide, a gift of incredible potential and peril. "Coordinates are set, Captain," his navigator reported. "The first destination is an uncharted system near the edge of the Virgo cluster." Hayes nodded, his gaze locked on the stars. "Take us there, Ensign. Engage the hyperdrive." The familiar hum of the engines intensified, and the ship surged forward, slicing through the fabric of space as they journeyed toward the unknown. Hayes couldn't shake a feeling of excitement mixed with trepidation. This was not just exploration. It was a path forged with purpose. Somewhere out there, allies awaited, if they could survive the challenges of reaching them. Hours later, they arrived at the edge of the designated system. The view from the bridge showed a massive, desolate expanse of swirling clouds, a gas giant surrounded by a dozen moons. According to the map, one of these moons housed a lost civilization, a remnant of an ancient alliance that had stood with the Queen's people long ago. "Captain, I'm detecting faint energy signatures on the third moon," Lieutenant Jax announced. "It's weak, but consistent. This might be what we're looking for." Hayes leaned forward. "Prepare the landing team. I'll be going down myself." As they descended to the moon's surface, Hayes peered out of the shuttle's window. The barren landscape stretched out below, dotted with strange crystalline formations that caught the dim light of the distant gas giant. The atmosphere was thin and frigid, casting an eerie, quiet beauty over the scene. Once they landed, Hayes and his team disembarked, scanning their surroundings. The air was still, heavy with the weight of centuries of abandonment. Ahead, the faint energy signature beckoned them toward a structure partially buried in the dust, a towering obelisk adorned with symbols that glowed faintly in the moonlight. "This has to be it," Dr. Lin, the team's xenoarchaeologist, murmured, her eyes wide with awe. "This structure, it's like nothing we've seen before. The architecture resembles that of the Queen's sanctuary, but there are distinct differences. It's as if it were built by her people's allies." They approached the obelisk, and as they drew closer, Hayes felt a slight buzzing in his mind, a faint resonance that seemed to echo the Queen's presence. It was as if the structure recognized him, acknowledged the purpose of their visit. With a deep breath, he reached out and placed his hand on the surface. In an instant, the symbols on the obelisk flared to life, casting a brilliant light across the landscape. A soft hum filled the air, and suddenly a holographic figure materialized before them, a humanoid shape, faint and flickering, yet undeniably alive with intelligence. The figure's voice was calm, resonant, as if it had waited countless ages to speak. "Who stands before the guardians of the Arhel?" it asked, its tone measured and formal. Hayes straightened, feeling the weight of the moment. "I am Captain Hayes of Earth. I seek the remnants of an ancient alliance. We come with a pledge of unity, to stand against the darkness that threatens us all." The hologram's expression softened, its eyes scanning the group. The Guardians have been silent for eons, waiting for the arrival of those who would bear the promise of the past. If you seek alliance, then you must prove your intentions. Are you willing to face the trials we set forth? Hayes exchanged a glance with his team, noting their determined expressions. He took a step forward, his voice firm. "We are ready." The figure nodded solemnly. "Then follow and prepare yourselves." The obelisk's light expanded, forming a doorway that led deep into the moon's surface. Hayes and his team entered, descending into an underground chamber that pulsed with an energy older than humanity itself. The walls were lined with carvings and inscriptions, fragments of a story that had been forgotten by time. As they moved deeper, they reached a vast hall filled with intricate mechanisms, each one humming with dormant power. The figure appeared again, gesturing toward the devices. "These are the trials of the Arhel. Each test will assess a different aspect of your character: wisdom, courage, and integrity. Only those who possess all three may earn the trust of the Guardians." Hayes took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the task. What do we need to do?" The figure pointed to the first mechanism, a massive, crystalline construct that glowed with an inner light. "The first trial is one of wisdom. You must unlock the secrets of the Nexus crystal. Align the energy pathways in a way that reflects balance and harmony. But be cautious. Improper alignment could disrupt the entire system." Dr. Lin stepped forward, her eyes gleaming with excitement. "I'll take the lead on this one, Captain. I've studied similar artifacts before." Hayes nodded, stepping back as she approached the device. The rest of the team watched in silence, the tension in the room thick as she worked to decipher the crystal's patterns. Slowly, she began to shift the energy pathways, her movements precise and deliberate. Minutes ticked by, each adjustment she made casting different colors and shapes across the chamber. Finally, with a last, careful turn, the crystal emitted a harmonious hum, filling the air with a soft, resonant melody. The holographic figure reappeared, its expression approving. "The first trial is complete. You have shown wisdom in your approach. Proceed to the next." They moved deeper into the chamber, reaching a platform overlooking a vast chasm. At the edge of the platform, a narrow bridge extended across the void, leading to a pedestal on the other side. "The second trial is one of courage," the figure explained. "One of you must cross the bridge alone. It will test your resolve and endurance. Only the truly brave may reach the other side." Hayes stepped forward, his jaw set. "I'll do it." He felt the eyes of his crew on him as he began his walk across the bridge. Each step seemed to stretch out, the chasm below beckoning with an eerie, endless depth. Hayes forced himself to focus, to keep his mind steady despite the vertigo that clawed at him. Halfway across, the bridge began to tremble, and a gust of wind swept through the chamber, making the path even more treacherous. But Hayes did not falter. Step by step, he reached the other side, his heart pounding as he touched the pedestal. A burst of light enveloped him, and he heard the figure's voice echo in his mind. "You have shown courage beyond fear. The second trial is complete." Hayes turned, meeting the relieved faces of his team as he made his way back. The figure led them to the final chamber, where an ancient scroll rested on a pedestal. "The third trial is one of integrity," the figure intoned. "You must pledge your intentions here, not in words, but in truth. Place your hand upon the scroll and speak from your heart. Only the sincere may pass this test." One by one, Hayes and his team placed their hands on the scroll, each making a silent pledge. Hayes felt a warmth spread through him as he voiced his commitment to unity, to protect the alliance they sought to build. The figure appeared once more, its gaze solemn. "You have passed the trials of the Ar-Hel. The Guardians acknowledge you as worthy allies." With those words, the chamber brightened, and a map of the galaxy appeared before them, marking the locations of other potential allies. Hayes stared at the map, a sense of triumph and awe filling him. This was the beginning. Humanity had passed its first test in the galaxy, and now they had a path forward. With newfound purpose, Hayes turned to his team. "Let's get back to the ship. We have allies to find." Back aboard the ship, Captain Hayes and his crew gathered around the holographic map projected in the briefing room. The ancient map from the Ar-Hel had unlocked paths to other civilizations, each one a fragment of the alliance that had once stood united. But even as they studied the locations, there was one last mystery to solve: the truth about the Queen herself. Ever since the initial encounter with the Queen, Hayes had sensed that there was more to her than she let on. She had spoken of unity, of protecting the galaxy from an encroaching darkness, but her words hinted at a personal history intertwined with the ancient alliance's legacy. As Hayes pondered the clues, he felt a faint vibration on his wrist communicator, a secure, encrypted transmission. He tapped it, and to his surprise, the Queen's face appeared on the screen, her gaze as intense as ever. "Captain Hayes," she said, her voice steady yet carrying a tinge of urgency. "There is something you must know before you proceed further. Meet me in the lower deck of your ship, where we will not be overheard." The crew looked on, exchanging curious glances as Hayes turned to them, nodding. "Hold the course for now. I'll handle this." Navigating through the dimly lit corridors, he made his way to the lower deck. When he arrived, the Queen was already there, waiting, her figure half-shadowed. There was an air of vulnerability around her, as though she were finally ready to reveal a truth she had long kept hidden. "You wanted to speak to me privately, Your Majesty," Hayes began, maintaining his respectful tone but unable to mask his curiosity. "Yes, Captain," the Queen replied. "I have shared with you the purpose of the Alliance and the dangers we face, but I have not told you everything. I have kept secrets, even from my own people. Yet if you are to understand the importance of what we must do, you must know the full truth." Hayes remained silent, watching her closely as she gathered her thoughts. Finally, she began, her voice a mix of sorrow and resolve. "1,000 years ago, I was not merely a queen. I was a guardian of a powerful relic. A relic capable of uniting or devastating entire civilizations. It was called the Heart of the Stars, a crystalline shard containing the essence of our galaxy's creation. It held immense energy, a gift from the universe itself. With it, the Alliance of old created peace, harmony, and unity among the galaxies." The captain's eyes widened as he absorbed the weight of her words. "You guarded this Heart of the Stars?" The Queen nodded, a distant look in her eyes. "Yes, but with great power comes great temptation. One of our allies, a civilization advanced in technology but twisted in purpose, betrayed us. They sought to use the heart's power not for peace, but to rule all life." Hayes could feel the sadness radiating from her, an ancient wound she had carried for millennia. And that betrayal led to the fall of the Alliance. "Indeed," the Queen replied, her gaze hardening. "In the battle that followed, the Heart of the Stars was shattered, its pieces scattered across the galaxy to prevent it from ever being misused again. My people went into hiding, guarding our fragment, and waiting for a time when the Alliance could be reborn. We hoped that, one day, those who were worthy would reunite the fragments and restore the heart." A cold realization settled over Hayes. "Then, the path you've given us to other civilizations, these are the locations of the remaining fragments, aren't they?" The Queen inclined her head. "Yes, Captain, and with each fragment you will encounter others, guardians, remnants of once great civilizations. Some will welcome you, others may see you as a threat. But I believe that you, and those you stand with, possess the strength of heart to unite them." Hayes took a deep breath, the magnitude of their mission pressing down on him. "If we're to gather these fragments, what are we supposed to do with them? How can we restore the Heart of the Stars?" The Queen closed her eyes for a moment, her expression softening. "The heart can only be restored by those who embody its purpose: unity, compassion, and the desire to protect. It is not just a relic, it is a reflection of the collective will of those who seek peace. If you gather the fragments, the heart will respond to you. And when the time comes, you will know how to restore it." Hayes nodded slowly, feeling the weight of responsibility settle on his shoulders. "Your Majesty, if you knew the Heart of the Stars had this kind of power, why wait until now? Why trust me and my crew to take on this burden?" The Queen's gaze softened, a rare warmth in her alien eyes. "Because, Captain, for the first time in centuries, I see hope in you and your people. The galaxy has changed much since my time, but human hearts remain resilient, compassionate, and capable of great courage. I believe that with your help, we can create a new alliance, one that will stand the test of time." Her words settled over Hayes like a balm, filling him with a renewed sense of purpose. He straightened, determination gleaming in his eyes. "Then we'll do it, Your Majesty. We'll find the fragments, gather the guardians, and bring them together. The Heart of the Stars will shine again." The Queen reached out, her hand hovering over his shoulder, an unfamiliar but genuine gesture. "Thank you, Captain. Know that you do not walk this path alone. My people and I will stand with you every step of the way." As the meeting came to an end, Hayes and the Queen shared a solemn nod, an unspoken pact solidifying between them. The burden of their shared mission was heavy, but together they would carry it. Returning to the bridge, Hayes addressed his crew, his voice filled with the gravity of their new mission. "Crew, we have a new objective. Our journey is not just to explore, but to gather the fragments of a powerful relic, the Heart of the Stars. It is a mission that will take us to the furthest reaches of the galaxy, to ancient civilizations and forgotten worlds. It is a mission that could unite or divide us, but I have faith in all of you. Together we will make history." A murmur of anticipation spread among the crew, a mixture of excitement and resolve filling the room. They had come to explore, to seek out new life and new civilizations, but now their purpose was far greater. They were the torchbearers of an ancient alliance, and the galaxy awaited their next steps. As the ship continued its journey through the stars, Hayes felt a renewed sense of purpose, a sense that he and his crew were not just explorers, but guardians of something much larger than themselves. The Queen had entrusted them with a legacy, and together they would carry it forward, one fragment at a time until the Heart of the Stars was whole again. With the stars stretching endlessly before them, and their course set for distant worlds, the crew prepared for the trials and triumphs that awaited them. The future was uncertain, but they knew that as long as they stood united, there was no challenge they could not overcome. With their mission now clear, the crew of the Horizon set their course for the first destination on the Queen's map, a remote system in the Alathar sector, far beyond any charted human territory. According to the Queen's information, the first fragment of the Heart of the Stars was hidden within an ancient, long-abandoned stronghold once used by the Loranthians, an enigmatic civilization renowned for their prowess in energy manipulation. Captain Hayes stood on the bridge, his eyes fixed on the view of hyperspace streaking by outside the ship. Beside him, Lieutenant Harris studied the information the Queen had provided, her brow furrowed. "So, this is it," Harris murmured, her voice low but filled with a mix of anticipation and unease. "We're heading into uncharted space to retrieve pieces of an ancient relic that might be our only hope of uniting the galaxy." Hayes managed a wry smile. "Not exactly the mission briefing we got back on Earth, is it?" "No, sir, but somehow it feels right, like this is what we're meant to be doing." Hayes nodded, understanding her sentiment. The mission ahead was daunting, perhaps impossible. But after meeting the Queen and hearing her story, he felt a fire within him, a desire to uncover this ancient mystery and to play his part in restoring peace to the galaxy. "Captain, we're approaching the Alathar system," announced Ensign Patel from the navigation console, breaking Hayes's reverie. "I'm bringing us out of hyperspace now." With a sudden lurch, the horizon dropped back into normal space, revealing a dark, desolate star system. In the distance, an enormous asteroid field loomed, its rocks glinting dimly in the faint light of a red dwarf star. Somewhere within that asteroid field was the Loranthian stronghold, and the first fragment. "All hands, prepare for entry into the asteroid field," Hayes ordered. "We're heading into unfamiliar territory, so stay sharp." As the horizon moved cautiously toward the field, the ship's sensors hummed to life, scanning for anything unusual. Almost immediately, alarms blared, and the screens filled with red indicators. "Captain, we're picking up strange energy readings from the asteroid field," reported Lieutenant Harris. "There's a complex network of energy barriers weaving through the rocks. It looks like the Loranthians set up a defense grid to keep intruders out." Hayes frowned. "Can we navigate through it?" Harris shook her head, studying the readings. "Not directly, sir. It's like a maze. Each energy barrier pulses in a specific rhythm, creating a pattern. If we don't match the ship's movements to the rhythm, we'll be caught in one of the barriers." "Sounds like we're going to need a delicate touch," Hayes mused. "All right, Patel. Take us in slowly. Harris, help him match the rhythm as best you can." Patel nodded, his hands steady as he guided the horizon forward. The asteroid field was dense, with massive rocks drifting dangerously close to one another. The energy barriers flickered, a deadly web pulsing in a complex sequence, like a heartbeat echoing through space. Under Harris's guidance, Patel adjusted the ship's course, matching the rhythm of the barriers. They edged deeper into the maze, each barrier opening briefly, just enough for the ship to slip through before snapping shut behind them. Tense minutes passed, with each second bringing the horizon closer to the heart of the asteroid field. The crew worked in silence, their focus absolute, as one mistake would mean disaster. Finally, the horizon broke through the last barrier, emerging into a hollowed-out cavern at the center of the asteroid field. There, floating in the center of the void, was the Loranthian stronghold, a massive structure, its dark, crystalline spires stretching out in all directions, casting eerie reflections on the walls of the surrounding asteroids. "Captain, we've reached the coordinates," Harris announced, awe evident in her voice. "This is it, the stronghold." Hayes leaned forward, studying the structure on the view screen. It looked like a giant crystal spider, each limb radiating with faint traces of the same energy that powered the barriers. "Take us in slowly," he ordered. "Let's see if we can find a docking point." Patel maneuvered the horizon carefully toward the stronghold, and, as they approached, a small docking platform extended from one of the spires, glowing faintly as if it had sensed their arrival. "That's our invitation," Hayes muttered. "All right, Patel, set us down." The horizon touched down gently, and Hayes gathered his team, Lieutenant Harris, Ensign Patel, and Dr. Arnoff, the ship's xenobiologist and an expert in ancient artifacts. As they stepped off the ship and onto the docking platform, the crew was met with an intense silence. The air was thin but breathable, the atmosphere carefully preserved by ancient technology. Crystals embedded in the walls glowed softly, casting ghostly blue light across their path. "Stay close and keep your eyes open," Hayes instructed. The Queen said each fragment is protected. We don't know what kind of defenses the Laurenthians left behind. The group made their way through winding corridors, their footsteps echoing in the empty halls. Strange carvings lined the walls, depicting scenes of Laurenthian history, images of their people harnessing cosmic energies, exploring distant stars, and, in one ominous panel, facing an encroaching darkness. They finally arrived at a large chamber, its walls lined with towering crystal pillars. At the center of the room, suspended in midair by an invisible force, was the first fragment of the Heart of the Stars, a small, brilliant shard glowing with a soft, white light. "There it is," whispered Harris, her eyes wide with wonder. Hayes took a cautious step forward, but before he could reach the fragment, the room shuddered. An energy field sprang to life, surrounding the shard. At the same time, one of the crystal pillars projected a holographic figure, a Laurenthian guardian, tall and ethereal, its form flickering with ancient energy. "State your purpose." The guardian's voice resonated through the chamber, calm yet filled with authority. Hayes took a deep breath, steadying himself. "We are here to retrieve the fragment of the Heart of the Stars. The galaxy faces a new threat, and we seek to rebuild the alliance that once protected us all." The Guardian's eyes glowed with a soft blue light as it considered his words. Many have sought the heart's power, but few were deemed worthy. To claim this fragment, you must prove your intentions. Hayes nodded. "Tell us what we must do." The Guardian extended its hand, and the crystal pillars around them began to hum with energy. A series of geometric symbols appeared, floating in the air between the pillars. The Laurenthians valued unity and understanding. To proceed, you must unlock the pillars by aligning these symbols. Each symbol represents a path. Only the one that leads to harmony will open the way. The crew exchanged glances. Hayes, Harris, and Arnoff began examining the symbols, their minds racing to decipher the pattern. The symbols shifted and changed, their meanings elusive. After several tense moments, Harris noticed a pattern in the arrangement. "Captain, these symbols, they correspond to our own journey so far. Each one represents a step we've taken toward understanding the Alliance." Carefully, they rearranged the symbols, each choice unlocking a sequence that brought them closer to the center. Finally, with one last adjustment, the energy field around the fragment faded, and the Guardian nodded approvingly. "You have proven your resolve. The fragment is yours." Hayes stepped forward, reaching for the shard. As his fingers closed around it, he felt a surge of warmth, a connection to something greater, a reminder of the mission that lay ahead. With the first fragment in hand, the crew turned to leave the stronghold, their path illuminated by the soft glow of the Heart of the Stars. Their journey had just begun, but they now carried with them the power to shape the future, a power that, with each step, would bring them closer to the hope of uniting the galaxy once more. With the first fragment of the Heart of the Stars secured, Captain Hayes and his team returned to the horizon, their spirits lifted by their success. The fragment pulsed with a gentle warmth in Hayes's hand, as if recognizing the beginning of its purpose. The crew had felt a tangible shift in their journey. This wasn't just about retrieving ancient relics anymore. They were guardians of something profoundly important, a legacy that could bring peace to the galaxy. As the horizon powered up, leaving the eerie silence of the Laurenthian stronghold behind, Hayes held a quiet meeting with his core team in the briefing room. "We have one fragment," he began, placing the shimmering shard on the table for all to see. It bathed the room in a warm light, soft yet energizing, a symbol of hope amidst the darkness they faced. But there are two more to find before we can complete the heart and activate its full power. Dr. Arnoff studied the fragment with a mixture of awe and reverence. If each piece is this powerful, Captain, I can only imagine what the completed heart could do. Harris, however, wore a cautious expression. And we're not the only ones who realize that. The Queen warned us. The Maelstrom Accord will try to stop us. They know what's at stake, and they won't sit idly by while we gather the fragments. Hayes nodded, appreciating her vigilance, which is why we'll need to be careful as we head to the second location. According to the Queen, the next fragment is on the planet Ilaris, in the ruins of an ancient civilization known as the Pirans. Their society was destroyed thousands of years ago, but they left behind powerful relics, including one of the heart's fragments. Patel leaned forward, intrigued. Do we know anything about the Pirhans? Harris shook her head. Only what's in the ancient archives. They were brilliant engineers and builders, but their civilization fell to an internal conflict, a tragedy that wiped out their people and left their cities abandoned. It sounds dangerous, Patel murmured, a hint of apprehension in his voice. Hayes met his gaze, a quiet resolve in his eyes. It is, but we don't have a choice. If we're going to complete the heart, we have to face whatever trials come with it. With their destination set, the Horizon departed from the Alathar system, slicing through the stars with precision and speed. As they traveled, Hayes found himself alone in his quarters, studying the fragment. The light it emitted seemed to pulse in rhythm with his heartbeat, as if it were alive and aware of its journey. A soft chime interrupted his thoughts. It was Harris. Captain, you asked to be alerted if anything unusual appeared on the scanners, she reported over the comm. We're detecting multiple ships on an intercept course. They match the Maelstrom Accord's signatures. Hayes's jaw tightened. How far out are they? Closing in fast, sir. They'll be on us in less than 10 minutes. Hayes rose, pocketing the fragment and making his way to the bridge. The Horizon crew was already preparing for battle as he arrived. The calm focus of seasoned officers reflected in their actions. They knew the stakes. All hands to battle stations, Hayes ordered. We're not letting them take us down before we get to Ilaris. The crew sprang into action. The ship's shields hummed to life, and weapon systems powered up, ready to defend the fragment at all costs. As the Maelstrom ships drew closer, the tension on the bridge was palpable. Enemy vessels entering firing range, reported Patel, his voice steady despite the threat looming ahead. Hold position, Hayes commanded, watching the tactical display. Let them make the first move. Seconds later, a volley of energy blasts erupted from the Maelstrom ships, streaking toward the horizon. Patel maneuvered deftly, dodging the worst of the assault while Harris worked to reinforce the shields. Return fire, Hayes ordered. The Horizon's cannons erupted with powerful energy bolts, slicing through the darkness of space and striking the enemy ships. One Maelstrom frigate erupted in a blaze of fire, but the remaining vessels tightened their formation, relentless in their pursuit. As the battle raged on, Hayes kept one hand clenched around the fragment in his pocket. He could feel its warmth radiating through him, filling him with a renewed determination. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about protecting something that could bring hope to countless worlds. Suddenly, the ship jolted as a blast broke through their shields, sending sparks flying across the bridge. Alarms blared, and Hayes felt the heat of the struggle as his crew fought to regain control. "Shields at critical levels, Captain," shouted Harris. Hayes gritted his teeth, his mind racing for options. They couldn't withstand much more of this. Then, as if in response to his desperation, he felt a surge of energy pulse from the fragment in his pocket. He reached for it, and the fragment glowed brightly, casting a radiant light that filled the bridge. "Captain, the fragment!" Patel gasped, eyes wide with astonishment. In that moment, Hayes felt an idea take shape, a desperate but daring strategy. The fragment was a piece of an ancient relic, connected to something far beyond their understanding. What if it could do more than just serve as a relic? What if it could amplify their defenses? "Harris," Hayes said, his voice urgent, "I need you to channel the fragment's energy into the ship's shields. Patch it into our systems. Let's see if we can use its power to protect us." Harris hesitated only a moment before nodding, understanding the gravity of what he was asking. "Aye, Captain, but this could overload the systems. We've never interfaced with something like this." "Do it," Hayes replied, his voice resolute. "We're out of options." Harris moved quickly, connecting the fragment to the ship's energy core. As she activated the link, a wave of energy surged through the horizon, illuminating the ship in a halo of shimmering light. The fragment's power flowed through the systems, strengthening their shields and creating a barrier that seemed to pulse with life. The Maelstrom ships fired again, but their blasts dissipated against the new shield, as if repelled by an unseen force. The crew watched in awe as the fragment's energy transformed their defenses, turning the tide of battle. "We're holding!" Patel exclaimed, his voice filled with wonder. Hayes allowed himself a small smile, feeling the fragment's warmth pulse through him. They had harnessed a power beyond anything he'd thought possible, and it had saved them. "Return fire," he ordered calmly, his confidence renewed. The horizon unleashed a final, concentrated barrage, shattering the remaining enemy ships in a blaze of light. The threat had been neutralized, and the horizon stood victorious, their path to Alaris now clear. As the crew took a moment to catch their breath, Hayes turned to Harris, a spark of excitement in his eyes. "This is only the beginning," he said, holding up the fragment as it dimmed, returning to its quiet glow. "If this one piece has such power, imagine what we could do with all three." Harris nodded, her gaze filled with determination. "We're going to make it, Captain. We'll find the other fragments, complete the heart, and show the galaxy that unity is more powerful than fear." Hayes looked around at his crew, brave, determined, and bound by a mission that would shape the future of countless worlds. They weren't just a team, they were the spark that could ignite a new era of hope. With a final glance at the fragment, Hayes gave the order. "Set course for Alaris. Let's finish what we started." As the horizon sped toward the next piece of their journey, the fragment pulsed in his hand, a heartbeat that echoed through the stars, a beacon guiding them forward into the unknown, toward the promise of unity and peace. Their mission was far from over, but in that moment they knew they were destined to change the galaxy.